Hi friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Rachel and welcome to my October wrap up. I'm gonna let you guys know right off the bat, I think numbers wise, October was my worst reading month. I think I read the least amount of books in one month that I have ever read since I started my booktube channel. So that's fun. I was moving in the month of October, so that is my excuse, but I still got like a good amount of reading done. I think I read about 8 or 9 books, which is still really, really good. Just for me, it's not a personal best, but I'm still excited to talk about the books that I read this month. I did have a few successes that I'm excited to share with you all, and then also some books that just didn't turn out the way that I had hoped that I'm excited to talk about with you all as well. So let's just get straight into it. These are the books that I read in October. All right, we're gonna start off with a bang. Usually I save like my best books of the month for the end of my wrap up, but I wanna start with some positivity today. So the first book that I wanna talk about is Crown of Oaths and Curses by J. Bree. I took my time reading this book, so you guys have probably, if you've been keeping up with my vlogs, you've seen this cover popping in and out of different vlogs. I took about a month to read this book, which is not typically like normal for me. I usually finish books, no matter the length, generally within a week, I will say at the most. But I took my time with this book, and I'm glad that I did that because I did thoroughly end up enjoying this book. This is an epic fantasy romance. It's the first book in a trilogy, and it's enemies to lovers, and this is the most enemies to lovers that I have ever read. I really, really loved this book, you guys. It is one of the most unique enemies to lovers books that I've ever read, and one of the most unique fantasy romances that I've ever read, because there is no romance in this book, but I loved it. I ate up every single second of it. Briefly, this book follows a world where fae and witches have been at war forever. They absolutely hate each other. They are trying to destroy each other's lands, kingdoms, people. They will stop at nothing to have one of them kind of reigning supreme at the end. And of course, our two main characters are Rook, she is a witch, and then Soren, and he is a high fae prince. We do find out at the beginning of the story that these two are fated mates, and their union will kind of end the war and bring people together. But because they have spent their entire lives hating each other and fighting against each other in wars, seeing each other's families be destroyed by each other, it creates a very, very tension-filled situation for the two of them. And they basically spend the entire book absolutely hating each other, and it was a delight to read, honestly. This isn't going to be for everyone, and I do want to put that out there. They're cruel to one another, more so Soren to Rook because he is in a bit more of a position of power, but from a fictional standpoint, I really, really enjoyed that like dynamic between them. And I do also think that because there wasn't as much focus on romance in this book, like they don't actually turn into lovers in the enemies to lovers arc in this book, the author did a really good job of building up this world. I feel like we got to see a lot of different kingdoms, a lot of different lands, what are kind of the political alliances in this world, and I think we are getting set up for a really fantastic trilogy, not only with the romance, but with the plot. I am so excited for the second book. I have not heard a word about it, so I'm kind of nervous about that because this book does end in quite a crazy cliffhanger. Like, warning you, one of the worst cliffhangers I've ever read, and by one of the worst, I mean like one of the best, because it's just so devastating. But I really wish that book 2 was out because this book does end in quite a crazy way. But I thoroughly enjoyed our characters. Rook is an amazing female main character. She's one of my new favorites. I really, really connected with her. Soren is terrible, but I found his character to be very interesting, and I think that the author still did a good job of kind of explaining his reasoning and why he is the way he is. I just think the author did a good job at exploring these characters, setting up an interesting world for an epic fantasy romance as it is advertised, and I'm really excited for book 2. So this is a 4-star, and if you love the enemies aspect of enemies to lovers, and if you find yourself reading other enemies to lovers fantasy romances and being like, God, I wish that they would just actually be enemies, I wish they would stay enemies longer, this book is for you. It was really good, and I definitely recommend it. Next up, I decided to do a reread because of course I did. I'm constantly rereading my favorite books, and on a whim earlier this month I decided to pick up Crescent City House of Earth and Blood. This was my 4th time reading this book, and it was fantastic. It was wonderful. 5 stars, obviously. This is arguably my favorite book. It's so hard to pick like an all-time favorite, but this is definitely up there. This book just absolutely means the world to me. This is the very first fantasy romance book that I ever read. This book got me started on the genre, and I just love these characters. I love the mental health representation in this book. I love the world building that Sarah J. Maas did in this book. I think it is so well done, so complex, so fantastic, and I love the plot. I love all these characters. I am absolutely obsessed with this book. It is a book that I will definitely reread for years to come, and I enjoyed reading this for the 4th time just as much as I enjoyed reading it for the first time. The next book that I read in the month of October was Blood and Steel by Helen Schorer. I believe that's how you pronounce the last name. Apologies if that is not correct. But this is the first book in the Legends of Thesmar, which is going to be, I believe, a trilogy, a fantasy romance trilogy. And this book follows a world where women are not allowed to wield daggers or swords or fight or protect themselves in any way, because there was a prophecy that was told to everyone years and years ago that if a woman does wield a blade, a sword, a dagger, something like that, it will bring end times basically for everyone. So in this world, our main character, her name is Althea. She really wants to be a fighter. She wants to be somebody who is wielding swords and fighting in wars. And she does end up actually getting to be the first woman in several decades to train with the other warriors to go to war. So she's very excited about this. This is what she has always wanted. But she does kind of have to get along with, begrudgingly, a very fierce warrior. He is one of 3 of these like very elite fighters in their world. And the 2 of them have a chance meeting, kind of have a little bit of an enemies to lovers beginning, but then slowly sort of become reluctant friends, reluctant allies as he is a part of her training and as the world kind of explodes and the war starts to come more towards their kingdom. There is also a bit of hidden magic in this book, which I enjoyed. And I will say that overall, I think that the magic system in the world was pretty unique. I was excited by that. There's definitely a big focus on training as well. So if that is something that you really like in books, you are definitely going to get a lot of it here. I gave this book 3.5 stars. I enjoyed myself while reading this book. It was good, but I just wasn't super overwhelmed with particularly how the romance went. Number one, I just felt like our love interest, he does have a large presence in the beginning of the book, but then I feel like he kind of goes away for a lot of the book. I mean, like he's there, but he's just not as at the forefront as I think he should be. And then I also just think that some of the conflicts were, I don't know, they felt a little bit unearned. I just wasn't super buying those conflicts. And I also do feel that the romance just wasn't written in a way that I love. Like it was fine. It was a 3-star romance. I just don't think that the tension was built up enough. I definitely think that our characters were very into each other early on in the book, and I think it just took some of the air out of that tension and build up very early on. I wasn't crazy about that, but I am going to pick up the next book in this series. I did buy it. I am excited to read it because I do think that the way that this book ended does set up a very interesting storyline for book 2. I like this book. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's a book that I don't necessarily go around like pushing my 3-star reads on people, but I do think that this was good. I just don't think that it was absolutely fantastic, but I could see other people maybe giving it like a 4 or 5 star. I do think that the writing style was it was just like quick to get into and very easy to imagine this world, so I did enjoy that. I was immersed very quickly, but I just don't think that the like character and romance aspect was my favorite. The next book that I read in the month of October was Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. I have just been dabbling with adult thrillers lately, just kind of when I have been feeling in the mood for them. I feel like just because of the season, because it's fall, I am just sort of gravitating a little bit towards that genre. And so I decided to pick up Daisy Darker because I have heard really great things about it. I'm pretty sure it's a And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie retelling, and it is set on Halloween. It follows this very dysfunctional family, and slowly they are picked off, and you are trying to figure out, okay, who's responsible for this and what is going on. And I decided to give this book 3 stars. I liked it. I just don't have any super strong feelings about it. It didn't make me feel a lot. It didn't give me an eeriness that I like to feel in a thriller. I like to feel a little bit like scared or, oh my God, what's gonna happen? Or just something, you know, from a thriller. I want to feel involved in the action. I want to feel an emotional reaction from thrillers. But with this book, I enjoyed myself. I really did enjoy the audiobook. The narrator was fantastic, but I just never felt like super overwhelmed with like, oh my God, I'm loving this book. It's so fantastic. I gave it 3 stars. It was good. I think if you liked And Then There Was None by Agatha Christie, you will like this because it does follow a very similar format. The reasoning is very different, obviously, because it's set kind of more in modern times. I enjoyed it. 3 stars. I don't really have much more to say than that. The next book that I read in the month of October was Hopeless by Elsie Silver. This is the final book in the Chestnut Springs series, which is my favorite romance series of all time. I love Elsie Silver's writing. I love the way that she writes characters. I love the way that she writes romance, and I was very, very excited for Hopeless to come out. It was bittersweet because I'm really sad that the series is ending, but I was still very excited to get to Beau's story. Beau is one of the brothers in the Eaton family, which we follow the Eaton brothers and some of their friends throughout the Chestnut Springs series, and we have been hinting at Beau's story for a long time, and we finally got it. So Beau's story is he is in the military and he ends up missing in action, and so when he comes back to his small town, he is treated very very differently by a lot of the people in the town. He is treated very differently by his family, and he's having a really hard time adjusting and also dealing with PTSD. He ends up befriending Bailey, who is a part of a family in this small town that has a very bad reputation. Her brothers are kind of involved in crime, and a lot of people just associate Bailey with them and just don't really give her the time of day or much respect. Beau and Bailey end up striking up a friendship, and then they also decide to strike up this kind of mutually beneficial fake engagement where Beau wants to be in a fake engagement with Bailey because it will kind of get everyone off his back. People will be like, okay, he's doing well, he's getting engaged, he's fine, we don't have to worry about him anymore. And then for Bailey, it would really help her to be in a fake relationship with Beau Eaton because he is the golden boy of this town. It will really help her reputation, it will help her get a better job, and it will also help her kind of make enough money to get out of town because that is what she ultimately wants. So the two of them decide to enter this fake engagement and their story takes off from there. I did thoroughly enjoy this book, but I will say it's not my favorite Elsie Silver book that I've ever read. And I was a little bit sad by that because it is the finale, but I still really loved it. I gave this book 4 stars. I don't know if I'm ever going to dislike an Elsie Silver book because every single one that I have read, even if I'm not like, oh, that was my favorite, I still have so much fun. I'm still smiling while I read the book, and I still am so excited to see our couple's relationship build. But there were just a couple things about this that I wasn't like, oh my God, 5-star in love with. Number one, the dynamic between Beau and Bailey is very early on flirtatious. They have very obvious crushes on each other early on, and I just don't feel like we got that build-up intention that I like from a fake dating, fake engagement. Meaning, like, I feel like it should be a little bit awkward when you start fake dating, right? Like, I love that awkward tension that, oh my God, I can't believe we're doing this. Like, I don't know you, I don't like you like that, whatever. And then you slowly start to realize that maybe you do like them like that. We didn't really get that in this book. I think that very early on, these two were very attracted to one another. So that is something that I wish had a little bit more build up. And then this is totally just like a personal thing because I love the finales of series. I love that emotional gratification of this is the end and kind of acknowledging that this is the end. And while we did get a good kind of like final scene with everyone at the end of the book, I just don't feel like it was enough. I don't know. I don't feel like it was enough of a signifier of like, this is the end. This is the last time we're all going to be together doing this. And I don't know. I just wanted more. I'm nostalgic, I'm emotional, and I wanted a bit more of a dramatic ending. But overall, I really enjoyed this book. I like the way that it was written. I just love the way that Elsie Silver writes romance, and it was a good 4-star for me. The next book that I read in the month of October was The Right Move by Liz Tomford. This is the second book in the Windy City series, which is a contemporary sports romance series of interconnected standalones. So this book follows Indy and Ryan Shay. And I have to say Ryan Shay, his full name, because like, you can't just say Ryan. He is Ryan Shay. I loved this book so much, you guys. These characters are some of the most well-written characters that I have ever read in a contemporary romance. I feel like I know these characters so well. I feel like Liz Tomford does such a good job at making her characters just leap off the page, makes them so relatable, and rounds them out really, really well. If you don't know what this book is about, Ryan Shay is an NBA player, and he keeps to himself. He's very famous, but he just tries to kind of keep to himself, focus on his career, doesn't really do relationships, doesn't really get too close to people. He's just a very one-track mind focused on his career person. And then Indy is a flight attendant, and she is actually Ryan's twin sister's best friend. Indy ends up finding herself in a situation where she needs a place to stay, and so Ryan's twin sister Stevie says, hey, Indy, you should stay with my brother Ryan. He has this huge apartment. He's never home. You guys both travel a lot. It'll be the perfect situation. So we have a bit of a forced proximity moment between these two, and Indy and Ryan are very different people. Indy is very outgoing. She is very boisterous. She is very loud and colorful, and just is kind of this ray of sunshine that comes into Ryan's very gray world. And once the two of them move in with one another, they kind of are just getting used to each other, getting to know each other. And Ryan ends up discovering that it would be very beneficial for him, for his career, to have a fake girlfriend because the general manager of his team says like, hey, you're the captain, and I feel like we don't really know you. You seem a little robotic. You seem a little cold. We want someone who is full of life and warmth and family to represent our team. Ryan and Indy end up getting into, once again, mutually beneficial fake relationship and start to fall for one another in the process. And oh God, the romance was so good, you guys. It was so, so good. It was built up so well. And the characters, like Ryan Shay is perfect. He is perfect. He is the anti-toxic hero. I love a toxic hero. I'm gonna be honest with you. In fiction, I am all about a toxic hero, especially in like fantasy romance, because I feel like I can suspend my belief a lot more in those situations. But Ryan is just the most kind, thoughtful, like perfect person. But then he also has flaws too. Like, he has his own inner demons. So he's not this like flat one note perfect guy. I just think that he is one of the most caring fictional characters I've ever read about, and I loved him, and he deserves the world. And then Indy, I loved her. I related to her so much. I don't know if I have related to a character in contemporary romance the way that I've related to Indy. She is a girl's girl, and I love that about her. She loves romance books. She cries a lot. She doesn't like camping. I was like, I am her. She is me. And I just loved her. I loved reading about her. She was really funny. She's just a character that you want to root for. And the two of them have such a, I think, real and sweet romance that I absolutely loved watching. However, this book did not end up being like a 5-star romance for me. Unfortunately, it's a very, very strong 4-star. The characters are 5-star, but just as far as like the plot structure goes and the pacing of this book goes, I did feel like it was a little long, and that is the same issue that I had with the first book in the series, which is Mile High. A great book, a great romance, but I do feel like there was some filler in this book. I really wish that this book could have been cut down a little bit, because I feel like there were times throughout the book, you know, obviously in the second half, where I was like, I feel like we could wrap things up right now, but then we still had so much book left to go, and I just feel like if we had cut down on some scenes that I feel like we made the points that we needed to make throughout the romance, but then we just kind of kept having these scenes, and for me, it just wasn't like my perfect romance pacing. But I still think it was like so good. I was just finding myself like, okay, like I'm ready for the story to wrap up at this point. I still really loved it though. I am going to read the third book, which is Caught Up, and I do think that is the shortest of these three, so I'll be curious to see if I do like that pacing better. But I think Liz Tomford is super talented. I love the way that she writes characters. I think that she is so good at it, and I will definitely pick up whatever she writes next. All right, so the next two books I'm going to talk about together because I decided to do a reread of the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. So I read Once Upon a Broken Heart and The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. I read both of these earlier this year, but I decided with the third and final book coming out last week, I wanted to reread these again just to be super fresh going in, and I'm really glad that I did. I caught a lot of things that I missed the first time, and I really did enjoy my reread of these. This is a YA fantasy romance trilogy. I gave the first book 4 stars, and I gave the second book 4 stars. They're not 5 stars, but they're still very, very good, and I thoroughly enjoyed them. And one of my biggest complaints when I read these books the first time was Evangeline Fox, the main character. I found her to be a little bit irritating at times, but on the second reread, she's not perfect, but I understand her a lot more and I like her a lot more. So I was happy about that. I feel like I got to know her character a little bit better, and I think that that is going to serve me well going into the third and final book, which I will be starting today. I'm very scared. I really do love this series. The whimsical and magical writing that Stephanie Garber is able to accomplish in this series, it is unmatched. Honestly, I think that she has such a specific talent for that, and I love that. So she'll definitely be an author that I pick up whatever she writes next. But yeah, overall, I really love both of these, both 4 stars. I actually like The Ballad of Never After a little bit better than Once Upon a Broken Heart, which is different for me. Usually I love the first book in a series and that's like my fave, but I actually like this one better. I just like the storyline a little bit better. The scene where they go to the Hollow is one of the most beautifully written, whimsical, as I said, once again, take a shot every time I say whimsical. Oh my God. I just think it's such a well-written scene and it really, really sticks in my mind. So I really love this series, and I'm very excited / very nervous to read the final book, A Curse for True Love. All right, and then the final book that I read in the month of October that we are going to talk about is Throne of the Fallen by Kerri Maniscalco. This is Kerri Maniscalco's adult debut. It is an adult fantasy romance. It does take place in the world of Kingdom of the Wicked, so we do follow one of the brothers, one of the 7 deadly sins, and in this book we follow Envy. Envy is our love interest. Our main character's name is Camilla. She is a painter living in a village. Prince Envy seeks her out because his kingdom has a curse on it, and he receives a prophecy that Camilla might be able to help him unleash this curse. So the two of them kind of reluctantly team up. Prince Envy is also able to help Camilla with something that she is dealing with in her life. The two set off on this journey. They go into Prince Envy's world, and the two of them start to fall in love in the process. I did not like this book. If you saw my vlog, you know I did not like this book, and I like went into so much detail in my vlog on it, so I'm gonna keep this brief. But my biggest issues are, number one, I was excited about an adult book from Kerri Maniscalco because I read Kingdom of the Wicked and Kingdom of the Cursed, and I was just like, these are okay. I'm not crazy about them. I think I gave them like 3 stars, both of them, but I was excited for an adult book by her. I was disappointed by this book though, because I think the only thing adult about this book is the smut. It is just a much, spicier book, so to speak. It does have a lot more sex scenes, a lot more explicit sex scenes in it, and I was really looking for some adult world building, plotting, something a little bit different from her. I was really hoping that we were going to just get more adult storytelling, and I really just think that kind of focusing on the romance and the spice and making that more adult was what this book was, which is fine, and I expected that, but I also expected a little bit more as far as the plotting and storytelling goes. And then also I did just kind of have an issue with the romance itself because it is an incredibly lust straightforward book. I do not feel like I watched these characters fall in love. I feel like I watched them fall in lust. And anytime they were thinking about one another or talking about one another, it was a very lust-filled conversation, very lust-filled thoughts. And that's just not my thing. You know, for fantasy romance, it's just not my thing. I need a well-developed relationship, and then the spice is like a great add-on when that relationship has been developed and we have that slow burn. I just feel like it just wasn't for me. It's just not the way that I like fantasy romance to be written. I ended up like skimming the spicy scenes because I was just like, okay, like I'm over this. There was a lot of them, and I just don't feel like they were earned for me personally. So this was a 2-star read for me. I'm very sad about it because like, this is a gorgeous book and it looks really good on my shelves too, so I don't know what I'm gonna do because I usually end up unhauling 2-star reads, but I was disappointed by this. I don't think I'm a Carrie Maniscalco girly, and I just need to accept that. All right, my loves, so that is going to be it for my October wrap up. I would love to hear what was the best book that you read in the month of October, and if you made it to this point in the video and you wanted to let me know, go ahead and leave the fox emoji for Evangeline Fox. Please make sure that you're following me on Instagram and Goodreads. Both are always linked down below. I really appreciate that you watched this video. I hope that you're having a fantastic day. I love you all so much, and I will catch you guys in the next one.